Hello and welcome back to the Irish Mag Show, where this is a very, very special live transfer special, where I am joined by my regular co-host, which is Chris O'Martin, and we also have the wonderful Mr. Joel Bland joining us. Welcome, Joel.
Welcome, Joel.
Before we get started today, unfortunately, we would like to extend our deepest condolences to the families of Diogo Jota and Andre Silva, who tragically lost their lives today in a very unfortunate accident. It was just absolutely harrowing. Just what else can you say? That's absolutely shocking. Unfortunately, it's just
shocking.
Don't know what else to say.
It was horrible waking up to that news. It literally makes you feel sick, doesn't it? It's hard to process sometimes because you just kind of think footballers are invincible, but you know they are humans. And hearing that this morning was just a horrible, horrible feeling. So
it puts it into perspective where everything can go in an instant, and you just mental. You don't want to be thinking about it, but we'll move on. Before we get into the madness, the Irish Mags are proudly sponsored by Flagman Ireland. Flagman Ireland specialises in quality digitally printed flags, buntings, tablecloths, table flags and hand wavers. Their online store also stocks and sells a wide range of international, domestic flags, including the heavy woven government standard Irish tricolour in various sizes and finishes, and also stocks all of our wonderful Irish Mags flags, one of which you can kind of see over my shoulder, but it's too sunny, which doesn't happen very much in Ireland. So for any queries, please visit flagmanireland.com.
Brilliant, Al. Brilliant, Al. Look, we got to give it, Joel. We got to give it to him. That's the first time doing it. That is brilliant.
That's me. That's the nerves gone now. Thank God. I can breathe again. So, Joel, welcome back. First of all, we have had you here before, so thank you very, very much for joining us again.
Pleasure, lads. Yeah,
we mustn't have been that bad. That's a good thing. So, we'll kick off with pretty much the breaking news that's just dropped in the last 2 or 3 minutes, which is Anthony Elanga. So, Joel, have you got any other insider information about this, or are we just going from the Fabrizio's mouth?
Yeah, I mean, this is great timing, as we were literally saying before the pod, and then it's just been followed up as well by Craig. Annoyingly, I mean, I didn't have time, and I'm not going to claim, I heard this first or whatever, but a lad who's been updating me on this deal, kind of from the last couple of weeks or so, he said that the most recent offer on the table was 55 million. He said it hadn't been accepted or declined. He just said the only issues now, if there were issues to come up, would be the structure. Forest obviously wanting the bulk of it up front, but Newcastle are apparently trying to do a lot of add-ons, as you would with, you know, in a state where PSR is so important. But it sounds as if now that this one is now very likely to go through. And I'll be very, very glad, because I know there's been a lot of angst and kind of tetchiness among the fan base, and rightly so, especially after Howe come out and said them comments around speed. So it'll be nice to get one through the door for the start of pre-season, because obviously, you know, Eddie Howe's really emphasized that, and it'll be great to kind of integrate him with the squad. But like I said, it might go on a bit when you know, the sorting out kind of formalities around structure and add-ons, but it does sound very much that this one is now going to happen. So yeah,
that's any incoming at this stage would be an absolute bonus, because you can kind of see where some of the fan base are coming from, that they're getting a bit angsty. But I keep saying to people, calm down. We really need to look at this at the end of the window. We'd all have loved to have 7 players in on the 1st of July and have our transfer window done at that stage, but that's not how real life works, unfortunately.
Yeah. When Eddie Howe said that he wanted to get people in quick, right, he might have been talking about from the 1st of July onwards, and this is pretty quick. I mean, this is like 2 or 3 days into it, so this is quick.
And if you look as well, like traditionally speaking, Newcastle do tend to do the signings at the start of July. So that's just been a thing for the club for ages, you know. And I think as well, what people need to remember, obviously it can be seen from a perspective where we haven't acted quickly, but we did really, like, I'm assuming everybody who's listening to this has read the reports on Dean Hodgson, how we presented a really good offer, and his camp really liked that. We kind of done all we could. We got in there early. You know, when Real Madrid come knocking, there's not much you can do.
It's Real Madrid.
The lap as well, he chose Chelsea. We were kind of in there pretty early. João Pedro, pains us to say it, but quite frankly, you know, he's picked Chelsea over us, whether that's money oriented or perhaps location as well, maybe a bit of both. Newcastle were very heavily involved, and he was a leading target. So that there was, these players that they tried to bring in, but obviously they've just picked other clubs. But it'll be good if this one does happen and it does come through, because I'm hoping that this, will carry a bit of momentum, and hopefully we then get, you'd imagine the next one, who's
Trafford.
It would be Trafford, yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of Trafford, what's your little bit of info that you have on Trafford at the minute? Because it seemed to go a little bit quiet. It seemed to be literally knocking on the door that it was done, and then all of a sudden we've stopped. So.
Yeah. So as most fans know, this interest has now been going on since last summer, and I think even when I came on your podcast in January, I was actually watching it back, and I said, if you gave us £100, who would be the most confident person? I'd put a bet on to come through the doors, and I said it would be Trafford, and I still absolutely think that's going to happen. I've teased it on my Twitter page, put the little comment up that Nick Pope left on his Instagram, which I found quite funny. So welcome NUFC Shagger. But in all seriousness, we know that personal terms have been agreed. That's also been widely reported by reputable journos. He's extremely keen on the move. He's said it now publicly on the Fozcast, which I'm assuming again you've probably seen. I fully expect it to happen. I know Burnley were hardballing with 40 million. That's definitely the number they were kind of aiming for, and that's because I speak to Nico as well. Do you know Alan Nico? He puts stuff out on Twitter occasionally. I was speaking to him, and he's been very clued up because he's got a great relationship with Burnley. And they said they are hardballing with 40 million, but there's confidence on our side, and it looks like it's heading the way where compromise is probably going to be made at around 32 to 35 million. Again, probably with a fee, and then add-ons going up to 35 million would probably be my prediction. But yeah, my information is that he's going to be coming in. Hopefully sometime very soon in the next couple of weeks. And he's going to be fighting for that number one spot. I think there's been a lot of discussion online whether Trafford's going to go straight in, whether Pope wants out. My information is that Nick Pope's happy to stay at the club. I personally think, and by speaking to other people and what they've heard, I imagine, unless something drastic happens in pre-season, that Howe would still start the season with Pope and goal. And I think over the course of the season, going into the new year, the kind of idea would be Trafford would take over. That's at least how I see it. But going back on the deal, I do think this one happens.
I think it's a no-brainer of a deal. Like, the kid is so highly talked about. 35 million for the goalkeeper that you could potentially have for the next 15 seasons.
Because obviously goalkeepers peak age go higher.
It's a no-brainer. Yeah, like he could genuinely match Shay Given for the appearances for the club. Like, you're talking about someone who could get into the high 500-600s appearances for 35 million. That's a bargain if you look at it like that. And that's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, and he doesn't have wooden legs. So
I mean, I think you'd find it would be hard to find a keeper worse distributing the ball than Nick Pope, isn't it? Because I've said it so many times before. Said it in the last pod, I think I've done with you as well. Like, if he was just kicking a ball and I didn't know he played for a club, I would not know he was a professional footballer.
Yeah,
his distribution is awful, and as the game's evolved and so many more teams are like pressing higher up the pitch, you need a goalkeeper who can distribute well, and that's one of Trafford's like obvious strengths. Not to speak about, as well, his shot stopping ability. I haven't got the number off my head, but he kept so many clean sheets in the Championship last year.
I think.
Absolutely solid. I mean, that must be a record of some sort.
It is,
and as well, it's worth noting that all going well, he's very likely to be England's number one. So if Newcastle got into a position where, they did look to sell him in the future, his value is going to be triple what he's worth now quite easily. If that does happen.
Like, Newcastle United could have England number one, England's first choice right back, and England's first choice left back.
Yeah,
playing in the Premier League. I mean,
that would be crazy good.
And Dan Burn, England's first choice centre half as well. So, like, So that's the goalkeeper and the Elanga deal talked about. So, Joe, you were kind of teasing a few other bits on Twitter or Twix or whatever you want to call it these days. So what's your next bit of little tidbit of information that you have for us?
Yeah, so one that's come with quite a lot of substance, which is why I've reported it, because I'll hear like whispers and stuff all the time, but I'm very hesitant in what I put up on my profile. But Loic Bade, he is a 25-year-old centre-back who plays for Sevilla. He's 6'3". He's French. What's interesting, I think, about this one is at a glance, he absolutely does fit the profile that we're looking for. An athletic centre-back, again, quite young. Centre-backs peak a bit later on as well. So I think 25 will be fine. I know that they're trying to get, around the age of 23 in other positions, but I think that age will be fine. And what's interesting about it is Sevilla, according to reports, have reported an 81 million euro loss in the last financial year and are around 90 million euros in debt. So I wonder if Newcastle are looking this as a buying opportunity. Is only as well if we look on transfer market, which is decent for kind of pricing up players. He's only got an expected transfer value of 25 million euros. I mean, the club might want more than that, but I just think with that financial information, if they're looking to sell, that absolutely could be an opportunity there. And as we know that the interest around Guéhi, who's a leading target, he's been Eddie Howe's #1 for the past season. It's looking like things are relatively advanced with Liverpool. So unless, again, something significantly happens where that deal for some reason doesn't go ahead and Guéhi expresses his interest to want to join Newcastle, this could be an option that Newcastle consider. And I hate the word consider, and I know people on Twitter do as well. But I don't know how else to phrase it. He's an option there. They may pursue him, they may not. He might have just been brought up in a conversation. I'm not sure, but they've definitely spoke about him. And yeah, I think that looking at him and looking at what others have put up on Twitter, I know we've got a really good kind of analysis account. I don't know his handle. He's called Jake, though. On Twitter, he's put up a thing already saying that he would have been one of his leading targets, I think, last window. So that's always great to hear, because I know a lot of our fans are very clued up on analysis and stuff, and it's something I've done in the past, but I just haven't had time to look into to look at it. But yeah, it seems like it could be a potential option. I don't know what you think, lads.
It's an interesting thing, because I don't, you obviously, you guys have known this, but I'm only just reading this now as you mentioned his name.
Yeah,
I'll put my hand up. I've never heard of him, right? But he did sign for Notts Forest on loan, season-long loan in September, but they just had a look at him, but he didn't even play a game, and they loaned him. They terminated his loan in January 2023. And he went to Sevilla.
Yeah.
So that's slightly worrying. But I mean, I guess Notts Forest at that stage probably had 56 players in on loan or signed.
Yeah,
they had 6 centre backs. But he's only a young lad. What age did you say it was again? 25?
He's 25.
25, right? Okay. So he's done a really good job at Sevilla.
There was interest as well from Aston Villa in January. I think they got quite far down the line with him, and I'm not sure if it was the player ended up turning him down or if the deal just broke down. But again, historically speaking, along with Chelsea, Villa and Chelsea have had very similar targets to us. It seems that our recruitment teams are very aligned in what they're looking for. So again, that could be another hint. Someone like Villa have been in for him.
They're all waiting at the airport, Joel, just to see where Steve Nixon's going and just hop on the same flight.
Just follow him, yeah. It's annoying, isn't it? But I think domestic targets wise, you've got to look, the pool is quite small. So of course, teams in and around us are going to have the same targets, and that's just something we're going to have to accept. But I do get people's annoyance with Chelsea, as they do just seem to piggyback on every single player we go for. So,
well, what about Malik Tia?
Yeah,
if that's how I pronounced it correctly. I think, Al, you were saying just before we went live there, that this is something that is creeping back in again. I know that was being talked about before.
I said I think this is agent talk, because the move had broken down to Como. Newcastle were previously linked. I think this is just an easy link in my eyes, where I think we might have gone, if he was available last year, we would have taken him. We're now past the Malik Tia stage of the building process. We're a little bit ahead of that. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I'd probably echo that. I believe it probably will be agent talk. But I guess, we've got a good relationship with AC Milan. It's worth noting as well, he's a client of Unique Sports Group, which is an agency we've dealt with a lot in the past. He's apparently available for a cheaper price. So maybe someone, again, who's still on the list but would be more of a kind of last resort, or at least they would try for maybe 2 or 3 players before him. I do just think, like you said, Alan, it's very convenient how he's humming and hawing over Como. Then this news comes out that Newcastle might reignite their interest. It's common sense. It's clever reporting. But at the minute, I haven't heard anything imminent that he would be someone that we would pursue.
Okay.
There's a few others as well, names I've got in centre back. So these aren't like concrete links or anything. They're just a bit of profiling that I've done in terms of, well, actually, we'll speak. Just I'm assuming you've seen Hope's story on Leonardo Balerdi. I don't know much about him other than he's 26. He plays for Marseille, Argentinian, 6'1". He looks like he again could be another option, an alternative to Gahey.
There's something about him though. A Marseille fan once went on hunger strike because he was so bad at defending.
That was
the funniest thing in the world. Yeah, I don't care.
It was the first thing I read on Twitter, like before I seen like any scouting profile, it was just like Marseille fan goes on hunger strike because of how bad Balerdi is. And I was like, oh, this is typical Newcastle list. But apparently I have read it and he did win the fans over the next 2 seasons and he's apparently a key player for them now. So that's Balerdi. I haven't heard anything on myself, but obviously Hobie, who I think he's probably our best reporter personally. I know him really well, and he would have heard that from a good place. Then another couple, that I've done some profiling on, is Thomas Araujo of Benfica. Obviously, we've been linked with Antonio Silva in the past. I don't know if he's still Antonio Silva's currently on the list, but he was a couple of summers ago. But Thomas Araujo, he's 23, plays for Benfica, 6'1", Portuguese as well, just as Antonio Silva is. He's really highly admired in recruitment circles. Chelsea, of course, have been linked with him, as well as Bayern, according to other reports. And he has an expected transfer value of 32 million euros. So I think that he is someone that could fit the mold. And then the other player as well is Mario Gila. I don't know if you know him. He plays for Lazio. He's a 24-year-old, again, centre-back. Bournemouth have reportedly had a bid rejected for him already. And would you believe it? Chelsea have also been linked. I just think at this point, people will accredit Chelsea linked like with any player, but apparently they have been according to reports. And he has an expected transfer value of 30 million euros. So that's just another 2 names there that I think fit the profile. And in terms of overseas options, they may emerge, but I don't have anything concrete on them.
Yeah, but it's a lot cheaper though, right? When you're talking about these prices, like they're so much cheaper because we're talking about in euro as well. But I mean, like these could. They haven't got the Premier League experience, which means that supposedly they won't hit the ground running. But that's not to say Tonali hit the ground running. Bruno, after sitting on the bench for a couple of games, hit the ground running. So I think it's all to do with the environment and the coaching. And we've got the best in the business, in my opinion. To get somebody into a system, trained well enough. Okay, they missed 2 or 3 games, just kind of learning the system and getting used to it, coming on as a sub and so on. I think that we should really, and I'm sure we are, Joe, looking over in Europe to get the right kind of character and get them in.
There'll be absolutely non-domestic targets. It's been reported as well. I think Mark Douglas has been very hot on it, that the fact that there absolutely is overseas people that they're looking at, they're just not in the media. And as much as like from a fan's perspective, we want to know who they are. But if it's going to actually lead to, getting into advanced talks without it being leaked and then genuinely giving us a better chance of signing the player, then I absolutely don't mind that. Fair enough. Keep them to yourselves if it's going to make the deal easier and not alert other clubs of that we're in negotiations with them. So I believe that is the case. I know it's Eddie Howe obviously he signed Bruno, but I think I do agree when generally speaking, he probably does prefer domestic players, like we've seen in Elanga, Gahey, in Trafford, all being targeted. But I think that the club is now aware of how difficult it's been to sign these domestic players, that they need to be more dynamic and shop abroad. Yes, it's more of a risk, but there's not been really. I mean, if you think since the takeover, there's not really been many misses when we've signed players. You can argue Chris Wood, he wasn't great for us, but he weakened Burnley though. That whole transfer had more value to it than just signing for us. But I can't think really off the top of my head.
Matt Target kind of.
Yeah, I mean he was Aston Villa's player of the season, the season before he came in for us, and when he came in, I thought he was tidy, and it's just been. Since obviously Lewis Hall's come in, he's been absolutely quality, and obviously Tino can play there as well. But I fully trust our recruitment You know, Andy Howe's really, really admired in the game. And I know that people think, and maybe even if it is a bit of nepotism, like I don't blame it at all, because he's very, very, very highly thought of as people who I've spoke to who are in the industry. So I do really trust him, Eddie Howe and Steve Nixon to at least sign. Well, I think we're going to try and bring in between 4 and 5, and there'll be 3 that'll improve the 11. Looking like at the minute, Trafford over the course of the season, Elanga, who you would think would definitely be our kind of starting right winger, and then the centre back of choice that comes in.
Well, look, just really quick. I was just going to say that.
I just want to bring this up. The Clon lad has just asked, is there any word on Giorgio Scalvini from Atalanta? Now, that would be my dream signing. I am a football manager head, and that kid is just a Rolls Royce in the game every single time you play. And if he came to us, I would be absolutely delighted. So have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, the only thing which I had heard directly, I think, was around a year ago. It was when I put up a story that we were interested in Alessandro Bongiorno, who's since moved. Yes. And in that tweet, I also said Scalvini is someone that has been heavily scouted, but that was a year ago. Obviously, I know that the links came out from, I believe it was an Italian journalist. I haven't heard anything myself. I think it shows ambition, definitely. But it might be a case of, Newcastle have simply inquired, and Atlanta may have said, unless you're going to pay mega bucks, then he isn't going anywhere. So I haven't really heard anything on it myself, but I agree that he would be brilliant.
Yeah, that'd be a nice signing. You've a couple of other links for us. What do you want to move on to the midfielder next?
There was just the midfielder. So I obviously do a lot of work with the NUFC blog, and this is credit to Ollie Hawkins, who runs that. And I've had it since confirmed by another person, and he'd heard it off a couple of people as well. And it's a link he posted the story today. I don't know if you've seen it, but he's called Amir Richardson. He's a 23-year-old midfielder for Fiorentina. And he kind of plays in that number 8 role, similar to Joe Linton, similar to Joe Willock. But the unique thing about this, so he's a midfielder and he's 6'5". So he has a very, very kind of unique playing style. And I know that, it's kind of said behind the scenes, Eddie Howe does genuinely like tall athletic players in his team. I didn't think he'd go to the course of getting a 6'5" centre mid. But yeah, apparently he's been scouted quite a lot. I don't have a clue if he's been engaged in conversations this summer. He's only got an expected transfer value of 8.5 million euros though. And I think he'd probably only be pursued if someone like Willock leaves. But again, it's another name for people to do a little digging on, watching highlights, see what you think. I've watched some highlights of him. I think he's, like I said, he's got a very unique build for a centre mid, but he would maybe bring something that's similar to Joe Linton and Joe Willock. But I do think that we will need to improve to add depth in that centre mid position, not necessarily signing a starter, but we'll go on and speak about Longstaff a bit later on. But if both Longstaff and Willock were to leave, without a doubt, we'd have to bring in another centre mid.
Absolutely.
Well, I see there his dad is former NBA player Michael Ray Richardson, so it's no wonder he's 6'5".
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah.
So, I've one question for you myself, actually, and it's about that Korean second division winger that you supposedly signed, Park Seung-soo. Have you heard anything more? The info I got on him was the 6-minute YouTube video I watched, and I was like, sold. Get me this man. He looks unbelievable. But anyone looks great on YouTube, if you know what I mean. So have you heard anything about that yourself? Yeah.
So I seen obviously the link come out, and I put it as someone who I speak to very frequently, and he went straight away. That's a name that I've been asked to chase up before, so I knew there was something in it. It's perhaps not as signed and sealed as it was originally reported, but it looks like there's a genuine attempt to sign him, and things are close. And I think it's just down to the player now, potentially weighing up other options. I'm not sure if there's any other on the table, but like you said, Alan, I have watched some highlights as well. And again, something when Paul Mitchell was here, he wanted to bring in these project players, similar to Guerrero. I think, and I know it was reported, I think, by Mark Douglas saying that, this isn't a signing that they're thinking of brand-wise, because I know, obviously, South Korean, and when we go on the pre-season tour. But I do genuinely think it would kind of help generate some buzz around the Korean fans.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, again, I don't know what kind of fee is attached to it, but it sounded like things are close and there was genuine substance in it. So hopefully that's a decent another project player on the list.
Well, just in terms of midfield, Al, there's a question in there from Lee Robinson, and something that I wanted to ask you, John, as well, because it had been mentioned before, and thanks, Lee, for the question. Is that Tyler Dibling? I'd love for us to have a look at this guy now. I know it's probably going to cost us, I don't know, £60 million, maybe £50 million. But I just don't see him mentioned anywhere else. Like even Chelsea's not chasing him, which is unbelievable. But is there anything at all? Because wasn't it a case that we were looking at him?
Yeah, so we've absolutely scouted him. We've done our recruitment team have done profiling on him, but this was the same information. So I got told this, maybe it was around eight months ago. There was just, and it wasn't even revealed to me what it was, but it was something to do with his personal situation or demands, where like him moving to Newcastle was like borderline a non-starter. And I do think, although for the future, he would be great, and I think he is someone who could hit the ground running. But if it's true that they are demanding a fee of, north of 60 million, I just think that would be a lot of money to spend on a player that, isn't guaranteed to have a significant impact.
Yeah.
He's someone who I like, and I've seen plenty of times myself play when he's playing for Southampton. But from what I've heard, unless something drastically changes, I just don't think that's going to happen this window.
Right. Okay.
I'd agree with that one, because he had a good season in the Premier League last year. He didn't exactly rip up trees, but he also lost his spot for Southampton in a side that were absolutely septic for 99% of the season. If you're not starting every single game for them, there's something wrong. And he did leave them once for about 6 weeks and then went straight back to them because he didn't want to leave Southampton. So I can't really see him moving from one end of the country to the other, if you know what I mean, and being happy about it. So I can't see it in a runner myself. Yeah.
I mean, another one as well. I think obviously now it's with the news kind of coming out. Elanga, if let's just say it, for whatever reason, Elanga doesn't get done, someone who I still think, and I know for a fact, I think. I know he's been scouted, Magnus Akiush, but I don't know if that was Paul Mitchell driven with him being previously at Monaco. He's a great player. I absolutely love him. I'm really surprised. I've noted down because I've done a bit of research before we started the pod, and I was looking at I went on the news section of Google and Magnus Akiush to see if there's been many clubs, and he weirdly hasn't generated as of yet much interest. And he's literally, if you go on transfer market and go on right wingers, he's probably, in terms of expected transfer value, other than Lamine Yamal and maybe one or two others, he's the most sort of young right winger in world football. And he's someone as well who has that versatility, which we know Eddie Howe absolutely loves. When you watch him play, Akiush just floats across that, the left attacking mid and right, he literally is just found anywhere. And that's someone who I think he would really fit our system in terms of being able to play quite a few positions. I don't know how much money Monaco would demand, and I don't know what his kind of personal thing is if he's wanting to look for a move into the Premier League. But I think next season, if he doesn't, I think you will have that proper breakout season. I mean, his stats for last season were still pretty impressive, but I know he's been scouted. There's someone who I spoke to who's close to one of the scouting system, the data systems Newcastle use, and apparently we've done a background check on him and that didn't come back great, but he's still someone that I know we've watched and potentially could emerge as an option if Elanga doesn't go through.
Just a quick one here from Lee Robinson. He's asking about Asana Diao. Have you heard anything about that?
I am sorry to be boring, but I haven't heard a thing, so I can't say anything on it. Yeah.
He's either pulling a player out there that I've never heard of, so fair play to you on that one. From all my football manager time, I've no idea who that is. I'm just seeing an interesting comment here. Now, I can't really believe the price that it's saying here, but Sean Gilly is saying, lads, I saw a report that Brighton would let Evan Ferguson go for £28 million. That'd be I think that's Isak's perfect backup now. I think you're absolutely right if you can get him for £28 million, but I can't see Brighton allowing him to leave for that price, considering how highly he was sought after.
Yeah, you'd be buying in the dip, wouldn't you? Because that would represent great value.
Yeah.
We know when he was playing well, he was getting linked to clubs, and there was like 50 million being floated about. So if that was an opportunity that presented itself, I guess. But it's I haven't heard a thing on it.
And the problem with Ferguson is he had that one breakout season, and then he scored a hat trick against us and hasn't really done anything since. Typical. I can see him going on loan to like a Celtic or a championship club even, and getting his confidence back, and then hopefully being the player that he was touted to be. But I can't see him doing that with us, unfortunately.
Yeah, I said the Clan lad mentioned just there now, like he didn't get a sniff with West Ham at all. They didn't do anything. Didn't do anything at West Ham. So I'd be really quite concerned about him because he's only a young man. He's away from home. I just really hope he's not one of those classic Irish players, Joel, that go over with big hopes. They're playing well, apart from Roy Keane, the couple of others that just come back home after 2 years and start playing for St. Pat's or Shamrock Rovers or Poles. Not there's anything wrong with that, but it's just they go and give it a shot in England and it just doesn't work out when they come home.
Yeah.
I think your phone's gone crazy there, Alison.
That's all 800 messages I keep getting. So we've run through a couple of your targets there. Is there anyone else incoming wise that you could see us potentially having a quick look at, or is that all the info you've got for us there?
I'm just going through my notes. I think I've mentioned everybody. There was a name that again a few people had heard, but another reporter has had it played down. Is that my mic or not? I don't know who's.
I think it's
your phone. My phone, yeah, it's my phone. Don't worry about it. Fine. Sorry.
So there's a player called Sanse. Do you know? I think I'd have to double check. It's being played down, so I don't want to speak too much on him. But he's a midfielder and he scored 15 goals last season in the La Liga. I mean, I don't want to write him completely off because, it sometimes plays into the club's hands when they'll play down something and just don't want anybody to know. When we had the kind of Barella smoke screen and then Tonali came. So, but yeah, as of this morning, a reporter who was going to actually write a story on him has had that played down. But that was kind of all the names I've got. All others are just kind of rumours. So I haven't got anything else to add on incomings. But I have got a few updates on our current players, if we're ready to dive into them.
Let's go.
Absolutely.
So we'll start off with Isak update. So my information in it kind of came out by Lee Ryder, like literally the morning after I put my evening tweet up, which is just one of those things. But I think that talks are very shortly going to be beginning for a contract extension, and there is now this real confidence. Nothing has been indicated that Isak wants to leave. It might be it may be a different story next summer. I can't speak for that, but I'd be 99.9% confident going into next season that he's going to be a Newcastle player, and he does become our highest earner. I think there's kind of whispers that he's going to be going on around, if he accepts, obviously, it'll be around 200,000. So it's quite a significant jump up. I think the current top earners are on around 150k. So putting him on just north of 200,000, I think that'll keep him happy. And yeah, it depends, obviously, what Newcastle do in the league. I think if we're pushed for the title, or if we do well in the Champions League, maybe Isak would see himself like past next season at Newcastle. But that's kind of the update that I have, that talks are going to be starting very soon, and there's all confidence from players camp, Newcastle, staff in the club that he wants to stay here this season.
If that deal gets done, that's the signing of the season, bar none. I don't care what other work we do.
It is because it is so important that we tie players like Isak down. And someone I was speaking to the other day made a very good point in terms of it actually may benefit our potential incomings if they know that Isak's staying and they get to play alongside him for their own kind of development and things like that. I think that actually helps us in negotiations. So if that hopefully gets tied down very soon, and then we can publicly announce that, and then players are obviously alerted, I think that would be great news. So that's the little snippet on Isak. Another thing as well, which has since been cleared up, so there wasn't really much in it, but Nick Pope, Fabian Shaw, and Alexander Isak were all at the training ground yesterday afternoon. They were what I thought and what I was led to believe by people who were messaging us, who were working at the training ground in like maintenance. It looked like the players had arrived with loads of players. Loads of gentlemen in suits, which I thought could only be the representatives, because it was weird. They were doing like work on extinguishers or something. And they were all asked to leave the building when Isak came in with people in suits. But apparently, I've had this checked out by Craig, and he said that, the people in suits weren't actually connected to the players. And he thinks that the players were actually just there for kind of routine pre-season fitness with the squad, who's bulk of the squad anyway is going to be reporting back next Monday, with people who are who have been on international duty are going to be given some extra time off. So yeah, I thought there was something in that, maybe contracts and stuff, but it looks like it was just a fitness thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Happy days.
A second kind of thing I wanted to update on is Miley. I've heard he's recovered fine from his groin injury that he had to withdraw, obviously, from the England under-19 squad. So he is expected to report back with the rest of the squad on Monday. And he's also been promised more game time this season, and I think he will get that, obviously, with the Champions League. I don't want to get into people's like personal stuff, but it was a thing that had been sent. It was that perhaps his family had felt kind of falsely led on in terms of how many minutes he would have gotten the previous season. I think he did kind of want to play a lot more, and obviously you would when you're a youngster and you'd played against PSG. You probably thought he was going to get more minutes, but it just was the way it panned out with our midfield and how informed they were that it was a real struggle. And obviously he had injury problems and stuff as well. But apparently he is absolutely in house plans. I know I put a story out earlier the window that Crystal Palace were interested, and that was confirmed. It had substance, but it was all led by his agent. It was basically his agent trying to make something happen, and I don't think that is going to happen. And the club have said that they really value him, and they've promised him more minutes this season. So that's good news.
That's good news.
Regarding Miley.
Absolutely.
And then just the last update, which I've wrote a story for the NUFC blog, but some might not have seen it. Was just on Longstaff. So his agency are trying to find him a move, in Longstaff wants an answer within the next few weeks. And I also got sent a little follow-up thing from somebody who's close to Longstaff, and apparently wants to speak to Howe when the players come back for pre-season and just kind of seek clarity and what the situation is. At the minute, to my knowledge, it's Everton and Burnley, the domestic clubs that have shown interest. And there's also an unnamed overseas club that I was told, again, that's come from somebody who's family friends with Longstaff. So it looks like, hopefully, I think for him as well, I want to see movement on this one. I'd like, obviously, he's come from the academy. His work ethic, second to none. His tactical discipline, Eddie Howe spoke about him, how well he trains and stuff as well. But I do really think that it's the time to move Longstaff on. And I'm told that they want around 10 million, but I think they'd be open to negotiations.
Is that all? Is that all? Just 10 million pounds?
Around 10 million, yeah. Which I think, for like a top six club, English midfielder, he's 27. Like, I think if you look at other clubs, like, it's actually a decent deal. Yeah. I mean, I know, really? like for buying clubs, that is.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a really good deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that hopefully there will be some movement, but it's just like from a fan's perspective, and it'll be from a coaching perspective. We know that Longstaff has I think he's reached his technical ceiling. Like I said, I don't want to, talk negatively about him, because, like I said, he's done what he's been there for. His work ethic has been great, but I just think now, considering Willock, Miley, Tonali, Bruno, and Julian are all ahead of him in the pecking order, and we've got youngsters chomping at the bit, central midfielders such as Alfie Harrison, who might get a sniff this next season, coming through. I just think it makes sense for all parties for this move to happen.
Wow. And what about Willock? Because I'm always going on about Willock on this show, like Bambi. So, legs and arms all over the ice, slipping all over the place. Is there anything on Willock at all? Like that there's Crystal Palace not looking at him, or
I think that was reported, and that was the only kind of like rumor that I had heard. But it really sounds, and this does surprise us. And I mean, I trust them obviously more than me. They see him day in and day out. But from a fan's perspective, I just think he's slightly degraded a bit in ability. And I think that his injuries have really halted him. And he's just hasn't looked like the same player technically. His first touch, his confidence, everything about his game that we once saw has just like disappeared. And like I've seen, what I've heard from coaching staff and Eddie Howe, they still think that there's a player in there, and they think that he can reach that ceiling that he has done prior. And like I said, we've kind of got to take the word on that and trust them. They see him day in and day out in training. But if it was up to me, he would be a player that I'd look at selling for, if we got anything around maybe 25 million, I think that would probably be a fair deal. Because he is still very young, and if he did reignite that ability that he once has shown, and on a fairly consistent basis as well, then he would be a great signing for someone like Fulham or Crystal Palace. I personally would take the money for him this summer, but it would mean that we would definitely have to sign a central midfielder to replace him in terms of squad depth.
I think Willock would run amok in a hot country like in Italy or Spain. Somewhere where it's not as tough on the muscles and all that, but I think in that where he gets a little bit more time on the ball as well. Like when he has time on the ball, he's an outstanding player. Like that pass to Isak against Tottenham a couple of seasons ago is one of the best passes you'll ever see in your whole life. He has the ability. It's just getting him to do it consistently is the real issue, unfortunately.
I read an article, guys, about how Napoli and other clubs in Italy are now looking at the Premier League players that are just getting cast off from the, surplus to requirements kind of in the squad, and they're thinking, well, we'll take him. So the kind of Scott McTominay kind of vibe that's kind of being created in Italy now, that we can take some of these players. Not to say that Scott McTominay wasn't an international Man United player, but it's just they've got Kevin De Bruyne now. He's been cast off. They've taken him in, and I was thinking when you were talking about Longstaff there, Joe, I was thinking maybe AC Milan or Napoli or someone like that will come along and nick Longstaff for the 10 million you're talking about, because it's not that much of a risk, and they are good technical footballers. I don't know whether he's up to the level of playing in Serie A, but it's just I've got an awful impression like that Willock might also suit Serie A very well.
I agree. I mean, other clubs will have seen Scott McTominay go to Napoli and absolutely tear it up. I mean, when he was at Man U, he and I can even admit this at the time, I thought he was decent, but he didn't look anything amazing. He was just a solid player, and I did not expect him to go to the highs of what he has done for Napoli. And potentially other clubs may see that, because I think in the past there has actually been comparisons to McTominay and Longstaff. I think we've since learned. I think the world's learned since that McTominay is obviously a better player. But other clubs may see that McTominay move in, who are Italian clubs, and maybe that is one of the overseas clubs. Like I said, I don't know where they're from. I don't know if it's even European, but
But Eddie Howe liked Scott McTominay, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
When he was at
Man United, and it shows his ability to spot things that others don't. So yeah.
Wow.
I just have a quick comment here. Now, I'm not even going to try pronounce the name because I haven't a clue, but it's after Elanga signing, will there be a number 10 player with too much trouble breaking through the low block? I 100% agree with this, and that's why I really wanted João Pedro, because he was kind of that in between the lines player where
he really would have been perfect. The fact he could play in that number 10 role, he could also cover Joe Linton. He started his career off when he was an academy player. He started off as a central defensive mid. He could have covered that Joe Linton role. He could have been back up to Isak if he wasn't fit. He could have played. He was quite. I really did want to sign him, so I was pretty good when obviously seeing the Chelsea breakthrough. But I do think going back to that question, I do think that Newcastle need a number 10. I mean, I know traditionally speaking, if we look at the structure of our formation, we don't play with a number 10. But I think that from what I'm hearing, I don't think there's going to be a drastic formation change, but I certainly think that Howe will be open to changing formation more this season, especially playing with two strikers up front or playing with a number 10. So I think if you got someone who is in a similar mold of João Pedro, it would be great. And someone like Xavi Simons would be good, but I think he's told Bield's newspaper that he doesn't want the move. But let's just hope that something's bubbling away in the background. Someone like a Xavi Simons that comes out of nowhere. But I think that Newcastle do have to prioritise. I mean, I know that you said after Elanga.
Yeah.
I think that the next priority does have to be that right centre-back and tying up James Trafford. And then they can look at getting that kind of backup striker or versatile attacker and potentially a central midfielder in as well.
A player that I would love, and as much as I hate to admit it, Harvey Elliott. I hate admitting that. I
think his stock though will be so high. Like he's obviously would have gained so many more admirers after how well he done for the England under 21 Euros. So I don't know how wise it would be buying off the back of that tournament, but I absolutely think he's a quality player.
Well, or James McAtee. James McAtee might be a good one.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we've again another link to him. We've obviously scouted him. But and from what I've read as well, I mean, I don't know this personally, but it looks like City weren't after like mega bucks for him. Was it like 20, 25? Yeah.
25 million.
Like that could be great.
I think that's one of the kind of things where that price is to go to Germany or to Spain.
Yeah.
With a clause that they buy him back for 50 million or 45 million or the first refusal at least. I think that's going to be one of those things.
And I don't think we'd want to kind of agree to that. We'd want to build him. Integrate him into the squad and become a kind of long-term player, and then potentially have the value. So I don't think Newcastle are in a place where they'd agree to something like a 30% sell on or a buyback clause or something like that.
Okay.
So it's kind of come to a bit of a natural conclusion here. So I think not that we've run out of comments, but I think we've answered everything that's come true so far. So is there
look, just really quick, is there anything at all about is there any other player now that we've missed out on João Pedro that we could look to see about being a backup for Isak? Is there anybody that's anything that you've seen sniffed around that we could that we might be looking at that
like that João Pedro mold is so incredibly unique. So I don't think there's going to be a like to like. There isn't. I'm trying to think. Like
there hasn't been anybody mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, someone who I think there's still a player in him, and I know the last time he was in the Premier League, he didn't do great, but he done very well for Fiorentina last season, and that's I don't know how you feel on him, Moise Kean.
Did he not play? Hang on, did he not play for Everton?
Yeah, he did. He played for Everton. He didn't do well
at all. He was like 19
so
when he was playing.
I'm not too sure, but I really do think there's a player in him. He's 25. He scored 19 last season and got 3 assists. He has got a high expected transfer value. And I know he's been generating interest. I think I'm just reading now. Man U have been linked. And I don't know if we'd want to spend, because obviously he doesn't have the versatility as what João Pedro does. And I don't know if we'd want to spend north of like 40 million on a backup striker. I think Liam Delap would have been ideal because that release clause was obviously under his actual value. I think without that release clause being there, I think Ipswich would have demanded, north of 40, 45 million for him. So that was really attractive to us and obviously other clubs. That's just why Chelsea went for him. But yeah, I don't know, maybe that's me clutching the straws, but I think he fits a solid kind of mold as a backup. I think there's still a player in him. But I don't think again would spend that much money on just a backup striker. I would need somebody who could be more fluid in the attack.
Yeah, and I'm just really worried like that we have Isak, Wilson, Osula, and that's it. Presently, I mean,
we might not even have Wilson as well. We don't know that yet, do we? So, Osula again, it's not been. I think it's looking like he's going to be staying with the squad rather than going out on loan. But again, that's not confirmed. And if he did happen to go out on loan, like suddenly you'd think a backup striker would become an absolute priority because they would. You'd then start have to shift and like Gordon playing down the middle when Isak was injured, and it all gets a bit messy.
There's two more questions there, Ali.
Yeah, just 2 quick questions here. And this one is from the Clon Lad again. And it's just, is there any possibility of Gordon heading to Liverpool? Is it still a possibility?
Yeah, so I obviously put a little thing out saying how his head genuinely was turned last summer. And also a thing where, and I know this is me going against some really big journalists, but from what I've spoke to, and I had to have it on really good authority, that it was actually Newcastle who were aware of Liverpool's interest, but it was Newcastle who reached out to Liverpool to try and broker a deal because of the PSR mess. It wasn't actually Liverpool making a move. And I think that was all reliant on Diaz being sold. But I just can't see them selling Diaz.
No.
If it was something that was to happen, I don't think it would happen until late on in the window. I don't know if that's actually got as much legs as I thought it did, a couple of weeks back.
That's good, because I think he's going to be our star boy for the next 10 years.
And he didn't have the best of seasons, but like we all know his ability.
It's there.
If he picks that up again, like he's one of our most important players.
Absolutely. And a final question is just here from Sean, sorry, and it's, do you have any idea on the budget? Now I know that's a bit of a difficult question to answer in PSR realms nowadays. Any idea what we could potentially spend or outlay?
So budget, when media comes out with budgets, you've got to think, and I've said this before so many times, is like when Newcastle fans see, we only have a budget of, let's just say, for example, 75 million. Like, you shouldn't worry about what the media are saying the budget is, because it if anything, they're doing a favor. You don't want other clubs to know how much you have to spend. So when people are like, only 75 million, only 100 million, like, just look at journos, like, obviously doing the club a favor by putting out smaller numbers. The official line I got back when I spoke to a few people who got an answer was north of 100 million. But I think it's actually, without player sales, I think we're looking at around 150 million. And with a player sale, someone like Willock or Longstaff, I think that'll go up to around 175 million. But like, just don't, as a kind of message to fans, like, don't get worked up over like apparent budgets. Like, it doesn't mean anything, you know?
Right. Okay.
What you're trying to say is be patient to the people who have no patience.
Be patient. Don't look at budgets and judge the transfer window when it closes, and judge the squad, what it was like before and what it's like after. And I think that was still on for a really, really successful summer. And I know that might be against the grain of what many, and like I said at the start before, you guys, people are rightfully annoyed. But I just don't agree with the definitiveness of people's opinions saying, things have got to change. PIF aren't interested anymore. And that's just simply not the case. Just save your opinions to the end of the window. Newcastle are going to have 3 players come straight into the starting XI, or James Trafford maybe over the course of the season, and probably buy 1 or 2 other players for squad depth.
Yeah, I mean, I said it to Al, right? Our owners are ambitious people, to say the least, right? They're not going to sit on their laurels until the end of the summer and have a disappointing transfer window. They know what they have to do. The meeting that they had on Sunday, where Paul Mitchell was basically shafted out, and Eddie Howe and Andy Howe and the guys were saying, look, we're going to follow what you need to do. Look, I'm obviously just like everybody else. I get disappointed every morning when you log in and have a look and go, God damn it. But everybody listening and everybody here, if by Friday, Saturday, we have Anthony Elanga and James Trafford through the window, I think I wouldn't say fickle fan base, because we're not, but we are emotional. I think our emotions will turn around 180 and we'll be a lot happier by Friday, Saturday. Just two Premier League proven players.
100% agree.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, let's stop on the positive.
That's exactly it. So, first of all, thank you very, very much for coming on again, because you've been absolutely outstanding.
No worries at all. It's been a pleasure.
Just let everybody know where they can find you if they want to listen to you.
Yeah, so I've got my handle under my name, at Joel Bland Sport. Pretty much everything I do goes on there. If I'm on like another pod or something, I'll put it up. But in terms of information and things like that, just at Joel Bland Sport on Twitter. Give us a follow. And also my DMs are open. Like, I get quite a few, but I do try and speak to everybody who does messages, whether, you might have some info, you might just want to ask me a question, you might just want to chat Newcastle. Like, I'm absolutely happy to chat through stuff with fans and things like that. So please do reach out if you want to. And my handle is at Joel Bland Sport.
Excellent.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you to everyone who watched, listened, and commented along with us. It's been our first live transfer show of the summer, shall we say. And to be fair, we picked a good time to do it with 3 minutes before we went live, the breaking news that we've had another bid in for Anthony Elanga. So thank you very, very much to all our listeners and all our watchers. We've been the Irish Mag. So slán while you lads.
Slán lad.
Good luck. Thank you very much, lads. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.